Hey guys, welcome back to Fish It First, the channel where you can trust the product reviews because we aren't sponsored by the manufacturers. Now, if you're looking around here, I've got a lot of fun stuff on the table today, and we are going to talk about all of this. But before I get to that, real quick, just want to say last week I didn't have any videos out for you guys, and that's because we needed a little bit of extra surgery recovery at our local hospital. So I had to take a little bit of extra surgery call. Missed out on videos last week, but I'm back. It feels good to be back. It feels good to be connecting with you guys again. And I'm excited because today we get to talk about all of this stuff here. And what I've got in front of me are rod, reel, and baits that I'm going to be using at early ice out to target giant pike. And let's start here with the rod. Okay, so we've got a St. Croix Premier, Muskie Premier rod. This is a 8-foot medium heavy power fast action rod, and on it I've got it paired up here with the Shimano Tranx 301. The Shimano Tranx, great musky reel. This is a great musky rod. The Tranx 301, if you're wondering, is basically essentially the same as the 300. It's just that the 301 is the left-handed reel option. We're going to do a video in the future, and I haven't decided yet whether it's going to be a quick tip or a regular Wednesday video on left-handed reels versus right-handed reels for right-handed versus left-handed fishermen. So that'll be coming up soon, and that's going to be a super important and probably controversial video, so be sure to be sticking around on the channel so that you can see that one. Let's see what I've got on here. Probably wondering line, 80-pound braid on here, tied up to my own custom made. I make my own fluorocarbon leaders. I've got a video on here. I'll link it down in the video description, how I make these fluorocarbon leaders. It's actually in our tip up video. But what I've got on here is this braid is tied to a ball bearing swivel from VMC. I think it's like 130-pound ball bearing swivel. And then I've got about 14 inches of 80-pound fluorocarbon there, another ball bearing swivel, a Muskie split ring here, and then I'm onto the split ring on my first lure that we're going to talk about today. This is first thing we're going to talk about, and we'll kind of touch on this later, but there's a lot of weight up front here, okay? So there's always the option to play around with this here. This ball bearing swivel here is a little bit of redundancy, as we already have a ball bearing swivel between the braid and the fluorocarbon leader further up the line. So there's options to play around with this a little bit. But this is the Megabass Kanata. So if you're familiar with Megabass jerkbaits, you're probably familiar with the Vision 110, probably the most popular jerkbait out there right now on the market. Well, this is the Kanata, and the Kanata essentially is an oversized jerkbait from Megabass, from the manufacturer of arguably the best jerkbait on the market. Now, this was intended for giant bass, and you can tell when you push on this and feel this, it's not necessarily a really extra firm bodied jerkbait. I've got a feeling that after a number of catches, I'll probably start to wear this thing down. But I like the slim profile, and I like the idea that it's coming from one of the best, if not the best, jerkbait manufacturers out there. One thing about the Kanata, though, is that if you read reviews on this bait, is that the rise rate is a little bit fast. Now, how I like jerkbaits to work is I really like them to have a nose down presentation on the stop, right? So you jerk, you get your little action. I like it to be nose down when it stops, and then I like a very slow, tantalizing rise. So it's suspended, but just very slowly rising. So one of the things that I have done to try to make this not rise so fast is I've switched out the hooks. I put a little bit bulkier hooks on here, and that should help with that. I'm guessing that having a little bit extra weight here up front is going to keep that nice nose down presentation. If it's too much, I can always take this Muskie split ring out of here and just go ball bearing swivel right to the actual little split ring that comes with the bait itself. One thing that I've done on the back here, and this is not anything that I came up with, this is an old bass jerkbait trick that I've picked up along the way, is you can add a couple of extra split rings there on the tail, and that way if anything short strikes it, you'll be able to still increase the odds anyway that you'll be able to catch those fish. Typically you don't have to worry about that too much with these giant pike that I'm targeting, though. Generally speaking, they are going to be attacking the head. We talked about that in one of the previous videos where we talked about how to catch giant pike on tip-ups and why we always rig one of our trebles right behind the head, because that's when we watch them through spear holes or through ice holes. That's where we're seeing them attack. They're biting right there on the head. So we've got a little bit heavier treble hooks on there. We got the split rings on the back. If this still is rising too fast for what I like, one of the things that we can do is we can use these guys right here. Now this is from Storm, and these are suspend strips, and essentially they are just lead weights with, they're like almost like paper thin weights with adhesive on the back of them. That adhesive doesn't work very well. You want to use super glue, but what you can do is, depending on how this presents itself in the water, is you can attach part of or a whole suspend strip on the bottom here to get that to sort of balance to the position you like and the right rise rate that you like. So you can put a full strip on there and then cut off stuff if it's too much, or you can do what I like to do, which is apply a small amount at a time until you've got it sort of fine-tuned into exactly how you want it. But I'm excited for this. I really like jerk baits in cold water, early season for pike. You know, these fish are not going to have the same metabolic activity as they will when it starts to warm up. So you really want presentations that are not necessarily more finesse, but are more subtle. You know, jerkbait can work all year round for almost any species, but really they do tend to shine in sort of that cold water situation in the wintertime or in the spring, and for these pike, obviously in the wintertime you're not fishing jerk baits, but the spring can be a really good time for these to shine, and mainly because it gets that shimmering action, but then it's got that pause. And when you're fishing for these giant pike, you really have to give a long drawn out pause, and it's on that long pause that often it gets them thinking about it. And if they don't strike on the pause, when you finally give that extra little rip, that's when they're going to attack it, essentially just out of reaction. So I've got that one. That's, again, the Megabass Kanata, and that's in a Fire Tiger color there. Next up, staying right along the same theme of the jerk baits, this is a duo Realis Fang bait, 140 centimeter SR. So this is the shallow retrieve version, and this thing is sweet. I am excited for this. Color pattern on this, I apologize, guys, I don't know. Essentially, it's got white, and it's got one of these hot stamp, flashy scale patterns on the side of it. But these are some of the strongest, most stout hooks that I've ever felt in my life. I mean, you cannot bend these at all. This bait was designed for toothy critters, large ones. We're talking about top predators. That's what Duo Realis designed this for. It's got an extra firm body, or extra hard body, and you can tell just when comparing this one to the Megabass version that this one is going to sustain a lot more hits for a lot longer than that other one will before it wears down. It's got a solid wire through body, so the same wire that you're attaching your line to or your split ring to is the same one that's coming down to this hook and to your hook here at the back. In the videos where I've watched them fish this, some of the videos, they tend to have sort of an upward pointing or a nose up sort of presentation. That's not something that I like. So we'll see if that extra ball bearing swivel and the split ring on the front there is enough to get that to weigh down. But if not, again, we can just go to our suspend strips and get it adjusted to the way that we like it. But we're really excited to see how this does this spring. From there, if you guys have ever fished an underspin for bass, you have probably inadvertently caught a decent number of pike. Pike love underspins. They love spinner baits, and the underspin is somewhat similar, right? So I think that's where a lot of that comes from. But this is the Owner Flashy Swimmer, and this is a 10-aught hook. You definitely could get away with a 12-aught hook as well. This one actually came with a willow leaf blade on it. It's all that Tackle Warehouse had in stock at the time, but you can buy these extra blade kits and swap stuff out. So I've actually swapped out the willow blade for the large size gold Colorado blade, which gold Colorado blades tend to work pretty well on our lake. You've got the screw lock on here for your swim bait, where I'm going to be fishing the Kitech Fat Swing Impact. You know, these fish do not see a lot of that at all, so that still works perfectly well. On some lakes, that gets so heavily overfished that a lot of fish are getting used to seeing that sort of presentation. So you may want to be thinking about switching it up and trying some other kind of paddle tail swim bait for those lakes, but I think that's what I'm going to use here. I've got a bunch of those, and they tend to work pretty well. Moving on from there, got to have a jig. Probably will throw this more as the water temps start to warm up and those fish get a little bit more active, but this is the chicken jig from Outcast. So Outcast, great Bass Fishing Lure Company. If you guys follow Josh Douglas or Seth Fighter at all, they're connected with Outcast Tackle, and they just produce awesome stuff. So this is their chicken jig, and this is a 3/4 ounce head here. White with a little splash of chartreuse. It's got a couple of little chicken feathers coming out the back here. And one of the things you notice is that's a nice real stout hook, very sharp, but you've got a good amount of distance here, maybe 6 inches or so from the back of the hook all the way to the back of these chicken feathers. And so I will probably be adding a trailer hook to this. Don't know if I'm going to throw a single hook on there or a little treble hook for a trailer yet. I'll have to make up my mind on that, but pretty excited as things start to warm up to throw this thing out there and catch myself a big old pike on that. From there, we're going to move on to a couple of musky baits here. So we're looking at double-bladed bucktails here. These are from Spanky Baits, and these are they're 8-inch fireballs, they call them. This color is $9 bass, hex, Martian something. I don't know. It's gold and green, right? It looks like a perch, and that's why I picked up this color, but it's got 2 large Colorado blades on there. Those are the same size. They've just got the standard clevises on there. This is not a stagger blade. Not all 8-inch double-bladed bucktails have that second treble hook halfway up the bait there. This one does, which is kind of a nice little feature there. Spanky Baits has a great reputation, so I'm very excited to be using this. The reason why I went with 8-inch is if I am going to be throwing this earlier in the season, when those fish are a little less active, I want to be using a smaller presentation. That's why I went with that. And then, of course, those of you guys who are musky fishermen, I'm sure love your black and oranges. This color designator, I think, is ball liquor. Anyway, it's a black, orange, and white. It's got the double Colorados. Again, this is not a stagger blade. Double Colorados there. It's the 8-inch fireball size again. It's got the hook here halfway down the shank. Pretty excited to be able to use these, get these out there. But again, I'm probably going to be starting early season there and primarily fishing a lot with the jerk baits. Real quick before we go, guys, I just wanted to give a channel update. Up here in northern Minnesota, we've been getting temperatures now in the mid to high 50s. And this last Sunday, I actually took one of my snowmobiles that had stalled, loaded it onto a trailer on the river, and took it off the ice. Later that day, a truck actually went through at the landing that I had just come up, and now that landing is completely blocked off. So what I'm saying is we are in this transition phase between ice season and open water season. And what does that mean for the channel? Well, what it means is that there's probably going to be less fish catching videos, but it does give me time to dedicate myself to putting out awesome reviews for you guys and a lot of tips and tricks. We need to start getting prepared for open water season for both pike and walleye opener is not too far around the corner either. So I'm going to talk a lot about the gear that you should be getting ready, how I like to get stuff ready for those different types of fish, and some tips and tricks along the way. And that includes this Friday's quick tip, which will be on a common failure with a very common knot that most of you are probably using and how to prevent that failure from happening. And then next week, planning on giving you guys on Wednesday what should be the most comprehensive video on all of YouTube on the different types of line, understanding the different types of line use in fishing, the unique features of each of those types of line, when you would use one over the other or how you combine them, what situations we use which line in. I think it's going to be a great video. So be sure to stay tuned. If you're not subscribed already, go down there and hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification next to it so you get all the latest videos from Fish It First. Leave me a comment down below if there's a particular piece of gear or lure or something like that for open water season that you want to see reviewed this year, and we'll do our best to make sure that we get that reviewed for you. And I hope you guys are catching fish this week. Until next time, tight lines.